Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Dreams, your go-to place for thrilling anime fanfiction. Today, we're diving into another exciting chapter of our ongoing story. What if Naruko's eyes possess the strongest Dōjutsu? Part 3. Before we jump in, just a quick disclaimer, this content is purely for entertainment and discussion. I don't own any of the anime footage used, all rights and credits belong to their rightful creators. Now, let's get started. Sasuke scanned the spectators, his gaze pausing on his older brother. Raising an eyebrow, he smirked with confidence. "Watch me, brother," he thought to himself. Sabaku no Gaara and Uchiha Sasuke, step forward. Hayate's voice echoed through the arena. Sasuke observed as Gaara appeared on the battlefield in a swirl of sand. Just then, he felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Glancing over, he saw Naruko standing beside him. "Sasuke, be careful. He's similar to me," she cautioned. Sasuke briefly tensed at her words but quickly masked any uncertainty. "Thanks for the warning, but I'll be fine," he replied. Naruko gave a firm nod as Sasuke leapt into the arena. Hayate noticed the faint hesitation on Sasuke's face but chose not to comment. "Ready? Begin." Sasuke sprang into action before Gaara could react. His attacks came fast and relentless, punches, kicks, and elbow strikes all landing in rapid succession. Gaara's protective sand struggled to keep up, barely forming a defense. After several seconds of non-stop assault, Gaara enclosed himself within a dome of sand. Sasuke tested the durability of the barrier with a few strikes before jumping back onto the wall. "An absolute defense, huh? Well, that's fine because my next move takes a little time too," he thought. Forming a series of hand seals, Sasuke began channeling chakra into his right hand. Sparks of energy crackled as the technique took shape. He looked up at the sand dome, a determined grin forming on his face. "This is the result of my training, the technique only 3 people in the Hidden Leaf Village can use." Up in the stands, Mitogai's eyes widened in recognition of the move. The sharp, piercing sound filled the arena as Sakura turned to him. "What is that technique?" she asked. Guy kept his gaze fixed on Sasuke. "It's the only original technique of the copy ninja, Kakashi. A direct attack, but one of the leaf's most powerful jutsu." Sakura raised an eyebrow. "If it's so powerful, why isn't it used more often?" Before Guy could respond, Kakashi himself answered. "It's a highly specialized move. While powerful, it's also straightforward, making it possible to counter under the right circumstances. Only 3 people in Konoha can use it effectively, myself, Sasuke, and Naruko. It requires the Sharingan for precision and control." They all watched intently as Sasuke charged down the wall, his arm enveloped in chakra. "Pay close attention, and you'll see the full force of Chidori," Kakashi instructed. "Chidori?" Sakura echoed. "It's named after the sound it makes, like 1,000 birds chirping. Some also call it Reikiri, referencing a time when Kakashi was said to have sliced through lightning itself," Guy explained, his focus locked on Sasuke. With precision, Sasuke's lightning-covered arm pierced through the sand dome. The arena fell silent as everyone watched, waiting for Gaara's reaction. A sudden, sharp cry rang out, making the audience flinch. "My body! My body!" Gaara's voice was filled with disbelief as he clutched his shoulder. Sasuke pulled his arm back as an unusual limb extended from within the cocoon, reaching toward him. He narrowed his eyes. "Is this his true power?" he wondered. As the sand barrier crumbled, Gaara was revealed, gripping his arm tightly. Sasuke prepared to continue his assault when a feather drifted in front of his vision. A genjutsu, he realized, quickly dispelling the illusion. Around the arena, many spectators were not as fortunate. Kakashi swiftly assessed who was still conscious before glancing down at the battlefield. The sand ninja had picked up their injured teammate and were already making their escape, with Sasuke in pursuit. Turning to Sakura, Kakashi acted quickly. Sakura, I have a mission for you. Wake up Naruko and Shikamaru, then go after Sasuke. This one will guide you. With a poof of smoke, he summoned a small yet confident pug. Sakura blinked in surprise. This little dog is our fourth team member? She asked, puzzled. The pug gave her a serious look. Listen, don't underestimate me, he said firmly. Sakura barely had time to react before Kakashi dispatched another enemy with a well-aimed shuriken. Move! He ordered. Without hesitation, Sakura leapt up to their previous position, where Naruko was already engaged in a battle against a sound ninja. Meanwhile, Shikamaru lay motionless on the ground, seemingly fast asleep. Something about the situation felt off, but before Sakura could dwell on it, Naruko swiftly dealt with the opponent, then turned and nudged Shikamaru with her foot. Time to wake up, she said, watching as he groggily sat up. Shikamaru blinked at his surroundings. Guess that worked. And judging by the chaos, looks like we have a mission. Sakura quickly nodded. We need to find Sasuke. He went after Gaara and the others, she informed them. Naruko glanced at her. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. She declared, immediately dashing in the direction the sand ninja had fled. Shikamaru, Sakura, and the pug followed close behind. Meanwhile, Sasuke landed on a tree branch just a few meters from the three sand siblings. Temari supported Gaara, her expression tense, while Kankuro unstrapped a large bundle from his back. Temari, take Gaara and keep moving. I'll stay behind and handle this, Kankuro said with resolve. His voice wavered only slightly, but his determination was clear. Even if I lose here, I can at least buy them some time, he thought. Sasuke reached for a kunai, preparing to engage, when another voice interrupted. Uchiha Sasuke, allow me to take over. He was meant to be my opponent anyway. Sasuke turned to see Aburame Shino stepping forward. Just make sure you return to the village safely, Sasuke advised before sprinting after Gaara and Temari. Kankuro smirked. You guys don't get it. You haven't seen real power yet. Shino remained calm, removing his hands from his pockets as tiny insects began swarming around him. And you believe you'll be the one to show me? He asked, his tone unwavering. No, Kankuro replied, releasing his puppet from its bindings. You'll see that when you reach Gaara. If you make it that far. Shino adjusted his stance, his Kikaiku gathering around him. I am a ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. No matter the opponent, I will give my all. Kankuro grinned, preparing his attack. Then bring it on. As they prepared to clash, Naruko glanced over her shoulder while running. Shikamaru. She called, making sure he was keeping up. The Nara heir looked at her, already anticipating what she was about to ask. The chase was far from over. Yeah, I sense them too. I'll hold them off to buy you all some time. Stay safe. Shikamaru quickly veered off to the side, setting up a diversion to mislead their pursuers. Meanwhile, Naruko and Sakura pressed forward, following the familiar energy of their teammate. As they neared their destination, they could see signs of the intense battle already underway. Naruko's eyes widened as she caught sight of Gaara. He was almost entirely surrounded by his sand, making him nearly unrecognizable. Without hesitation, Sakura rushed toward Sasuke, who was kneeling on the ground. Sasuke, are you all right? She asked with concern. Sasuke clutched his shoulder where the curse mark resided, his expression tense. Naruko landed in front of them, positioning herself as a protective barrier between her friends and Gaara. Sasuke, that's Gaara, isn't it? She asked, her gaze locked onto the sand-wrapped figure. Sasuke gave a brief nod, unable to speak due to the pain in his shoulder. Naruko's expression turned determined. All right then, she said firmly, drawing a special kunai. I won't let you hurt my friends. Sakura placed a hand on Naruko's arm. Please be careful, she urged. Naruko gave a small nod but kept her focus ahead. I know. Team 7 is going to make it through this together, she declared. Then, with a confident grin, she added, besides, I have a legacy to uphold. Without hesitation, she leapt toward Gaara, flinging the kunai toward him. Gaara managed to dodge, but he hadn't accounted for a move Naruko had used before. In an instant, her foot connected with the back of his head, sending him forward. Then, in the blink of an eye, she vanished. Gaara's eyes darted around, searching for her next move. Suddenly, he felt a sharp tap on his lower back. Hidden Leaf secret technique, surprise strike. Sakura placed a hand on her forehead. That won't work, she called out. However, just as Naruko jumped back to avoid Gaara's counterattack, the kunai she had been holding triggered an explosive seal, scattering sand in every direction. When the dust settled, a significant portion of Gaara's sand armor had been stripped away. Gaara prepared to retaliate, but before he could react, Naruko appeared in front of him again. He failed to notice the special tag she had placed on his back in the midst of the battle. Moving with incredible speed, she delivered precise strikes, using her teleportation technique to stay one step ahead. After several rapid exchanges, Gaara reached his limit. Exhausted, he collapsed onto the ground, unable to continue. Naruko approached him cautiously. No, don't come closer, Gaara said, his voice shaking. I don't want to disappear. Naruko knelt beside him, her expression calm but serious. Do you know why you lost? She asked gently. It's because you weren't fighting for someone important to you. Gaara's eyes widened as memories of his past flooded his mind, his siblings, the moments when they stood by him despite everything. As the realization sank in, tears welled up in his eyes. Naruko watched silently for a moment before turning back to Sasuke. Are you all right? She asked. Sasuke let out a small, exhausted chuckle. Yeah. I've got the curse mark under control again. Naruko nodded, then helped him to his feet. Let's go home, she said. With that, Team 7 turned toward the village, leaving the battlefield behind. Itachi stood in the center of the council room, with Kakashi by his side. Both understood why they had been summoned and braced themselves for the discussion ahead. The atmosphere was tense as Hyuga Heihachi rose from his seat. Uchiha Itachi, I trust you understand the reason for this gathering, Heihachi stated firmly. Itachi gave a slight shrug. Not entirely. I assume it has something to do with the return of someone labeled an S-ranked criminal to Konoha. Heihachi's gaze sharpened. That is only part of the matter. Many of us are also interested in why the identity of the Yondaime's child was kept hidden. Murmurs of agreement spread through the room as council members shifted in their seats. Itachi exchanged a glance with Kakashi before answering. Naruko's identity was kept a secret for her safety. Minato-sama had many adversaries who would have sought to harm his child. We chose to reveal this now because we believe she is strong enough to protect herself and has fully mastered her father's techniques. Heihachi observed the council before asking, including the Hiraishin? Itachi nodded. Among several others. Heihachi gave a small nod of understanding. Very well. That addresses the matter of the Namikaze heir. Now, we must turn our attention to the other reasons for this meeting, namely, the return of Uchiha Itachi and the selection of the Godime Hokage. Itachi let out a quiet chuckle. The reason for my return is straightforward. I was assigned to eliminate Uchiha members who had turned against the village, which, regrettably, included the entire clan with the exception of my younger brother. Afterward, I left to monitor an emerging organization that posed a potential threat to Konoha. I have returned to train both Sasuke and Naruko, as they have awakened their respective bloodline abilities. Some of the civilian council members visibly tensed at this revelation, but a sharp look from Heihachi kept any objections at bay. It is fortunate that you are here, Heihachi stated. However, now that we have this knowledge, we must proceed with the matter of selecting the next Hokage. Itachi gave a respectful nod before stepping into the section reserved for clan leaders, taking the seat that once belonged to his father. Kakashi exited the room as the council members readied themselves for what promised to be a lengthy discussion. Naruko sat beside Sasuke at Ichiraku Ramen, enjoying her meal with 3 bowls of miso ramen in front of her, while Sasuke had just one. They ate in comfortable silence, though the occasional passerby would pause to glance at Naruko, no longer just the mischievous troublemaker of the village, but now recognized as the child of the 4th Hokage. Sasuke noticed the lingering gazes and turned slightly, scanning the crowd before shifting his attention back to Naruko. "If you want, I know a good place to get away from all the attention," he offered. Naruko turned to him with interest. "That sounds great. I have a feeling I'll be needing it." Sasuke nodded, returning to his ramen. After a moment, Naruko spoke again, her tone more serious this time. "By the way, how's that other situation going?" Sasuke looked up, meeting her concerned gaze. He took a quick glance around before responding. "Not here, later." Naruko nodded, understanding what her teammate meant. As they finished their meal and settled the bill, neither she nor Sasuke noticed Kakashi entering the shop just as they disappeared in a swift motion. A moment later, Ayame stepped out from the kitchen and spotted the familiar silver-haired ninja. "Oh, Kakashi. I didn't see you there. I'm guessing Naruko and Sasuke already left?" Kakashi chuckled and gestured toward the payment they had left on the counter. "As always, eat quickly and head off." Ayame giggled along with him. She had always respected Kakashi, even before he became the leader of Team 7. At one point, she had questioned his slow-paced training methods, but lately, she had seen his dedication and had regained her admiration for him. "That sounds just like them," she remarked as Kakashi took a seat. After placing his order, he pulled out his book and began reading, settling in for a quiet moment. Itachi had only been walking a short distance before Kisame caught up to him, clearly distressed. "Itachi! You have to help me!" he exclaimed. Itachi raised an eyebrow. "Calm down, Kisame. And lower your voice, I'm right here." Kisame glanced over his shoulder, his expression full of alarm. "There's this kid chasing me." "Sushi." Itachi turned his gaze to see a determined Akimichi child sprinting toward them, brandishing a kitchen knife with enthusiasm. Kisame took one look and bolted toward the lake. Itachi stood in place, observing the unusual scene with mild amusement. As he watched, he almost didn't notice when someone approached him from behind and casually placed an arm on his shoulder. "That's Kuji for you, always eager when it comes to food," a familiar voice chimed in. Itachi glanced at the newcomer. "And why exactly are you leaning on me, Hana?" Inuzuka Hana chuckled, stepping back and striking a playful pose. "Because I can," she said with a wink. Itachi shook his head, amused. "Do you really think your mother would approve of you teasing someone with my reputation?" Hana seemed to consider it for a moment. "Honestly? Probably wouldn't bother her." Before Itachi could respond, a firm hand landed on his shoulder, making him instinctively step back. "That's because I don't mind," said Inuzuka Tsume, chuckling. "After all, you did what you did for the sake of peace in Konoha. Someone willing to go that far for the village can't be all bad." Itachi rolled his eyes but let the subject drop. "How's that new family member you discovered?" Tsume asked. Itachi cast a glance at Hana. While the Uchiha and Namikaze clans had always been close, few knew they were actually connected by family ties. Keeping his response neutral, he simply said, "She's doing well." Hana sighed, clearly unimpressed by his guarded response. "You don't have to be so secretive about it. I've known since before the exams. Besides, Kushina was one of my favorite babysitters when I was younger, so it's only natural I'd be aware of the connection." Realizing she had a point, Itachi relented and began discussing how Naruko was progressing in her training. Meanwhile, Tsume walked off, grinning to herself. "I wonder when I can expect some grandkids," she mused. Meanwhile, at a dango shop, Sakura sat with Yamanaka Ino, chatting over their snacks. Their conversation gradually shifted toward their teammates. As usual, Ino complained about Shikamaru's laziness and Kuji's appetite, while Sakura vented about how exhausting Naruko could be at times. It wasn't long before the discussion turned to their favorite topic, Sasuke Uchiha. I'm telling you, Ino pig, one day I'm going to be Mrs. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura declared confidently. Ino snorted. Yeah, keep dreaming, forehead. That ship has already sailed. Sakura looked indignant but fired back without hesitation. As if you could do better. I get to spend more time with him than you do. Ino frowned, knowing it was true. For a brief moment, she wished the team assignments had been different. But that feeling faded just as quickly. She wouldn't trade her teammates for anything. As she gazed out at the busy street, she realized just how much she relied on them. Turning her attention back to Sakura, who was still passionately talking about her future with Sasuke, Ino decided to ask something that made her friend pause. So, how are things with your teammates? Sakura's cheerful expression faltered. She opened her mouth, ready to brush it off with a half-truth, but something in Ino's gaze told her to be honest. Not great, she admitted. Ever since the Chunin exams, Sasuke has been spending a lot of time with Naruko. They act like siblings now, and both of them seem preoccupied with something. I have no idea what's going on. Ino studied her thoughtfully. Feeling like the odd one out? Sakura nodded. Well, I don't know what to tell you. There's not much I can say, Ino admitted. A voice suddenly chimed in from behind them. That might be the most honest thing I've heard this entire time. The girls jumped and turned around to see Kiba and Akamaru sitting nearby, finishing off a plate of dango. And what are you doing here, Kiba? Ino asked, narrowing her eyes. Kiba scoffed. What, a guy can't enjoy some dango? He rolled his eyes before continuing. Anyway, Ino's right, there's nothing she can really say because she's not in your situation. Ino crossed her arms. And you are? Kiba shrugged as he finished the last piece of dango. Nope. But I do have a different perspective as someone observing from the outside. Sakura and Ino exchanged glances, both raising their eyebrows. So, what exactly are you trying to say? Sakura asked. Kiba smirked. Just that sometimes, it's easier to see things clearly when you're not directly involved. You're trying to get Sasuke to notice you too, aren't you? Ino asked hesitantly, glancing downward. I thought so. Listen, from what I can tell, Sasuke now is much more approachable than he used to be. He actually talks to people, and Naruko finally has another friend besides Shikamaru, Kuji, and me. Not that we were ever that close. Ino looked up at him. So, what are you saying? Just let things play out naturally. That's the best advice I can give, he replied, standing up and stretching. Anyway, I need to get going. Kurenai-sensei asked our team to meet at Training Ground 8 in about 10 minutes. Ino and Sakura watched as Kiba walked off, his hands folded behind his head. Sharing a glance, Ino sighed. Maybe he's right. There's not much we can do, so we might as well just see how things unfold. Sakura didn't respond, her gaze fixed ahead. Ino noticed the emotion in her friend's eyes and frowned. I really hope she doesn't do anything reckless, she thought to herself. A month had passed since the attack on the Hidden Leaf Village, and the council had finally decided on the ideal candidate for Hokage. As Jiraiya made his way through the village toward Training Ground 7, old memories resurfaced. 3 young shinobi standing before a massive salamander, a small hut filled with eager students, and moments of deep camaraderie that shaped his journey. Though these memories lingered, he pushed them aside as he arrived at his destination. Standing off to the side was Sakura, the pink-haired kunoichi who often kept an eye on Sasuke. Beside her was Ino Yamanaka, wearing a focused expression as she observed the ongoing match. Following their gaze, Jiraiya turned his attention to the center of the training ground, where Kakashi and Itachi stood, watching over a sparring session between Naruko and Sasuke. Jiraiya casually approached and placed a hand on Kakashi's shoulder. What's happening? He asked. Kakashi shrugged. Naruko and Sasuke are having a friendly sparring session to keep their skills sharp. Itachi has been teaching them some battle genjutsu techniques, and they've been incorporating them into their fights. So, what brings you here? Jiraiya's expression grew serious. I need to take Naruko away for a while. The council has made its decision on the next Hokage. Both Kakashi and Itachi turned to him with interest. Oh? Kakashi prompted. Jiraiya nodded. They've chosen my old teammate, Tsunade. Kakashi acknowledged this with a nod. Do you think she'll accept? Jiraiya exhaled and looked away. I'm not sure. It depends on her. But that's not the only reason I came here. I want Naruko to come with me. Kakashi considered this before turning to Itachi. What do you think? Itachi took a moment before responding. I see no reason why not. I wish you both the best. Jiraiya nodded in appreciation before turning his attention back to the sparring match. Dash. At the village gates, Sasuke and Naruko stood side by side, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Itachi nearby. Sasuke glanced at Naruko before looking down the road. Take care of yourself, Dobi. I don't want to deal with Sakura's lectures alone, he said, crossing his arms. Naruko grinned. Don't worry about it, team. I'll be back before you know it. Sasuke smirked slightly before turning and walking back into the village. Naruko watched him go before turning her attention to Jiraiya. All right, let's get moving, Pervy Sage. She said with excitement. Jiraiya sighed. Don't call me that, and be patient. We've got a long journey ahead, and we'll be doing a lot of training along the way. Naruko's face lit up. Training? Will it make me stronger? Jiraiya nodded. Much stronger. I'll be teaching you some of the techniques your father favored. Naruko practically jumped with excitement. Nearby, Kakashi chuckled. It's nice to see her so enthusiastic about something again, he remarked. Itachi glanced at him as Jiraiya and Naruko set off. What do you mean? He asked. Naruko has always been full of energy. Honestly, I was surprised by how composed she was during the Chunin exams. Itachi observed him for a moment before speaking. Is something on your mind? Kakashi turned his gaze back toward the village. Yeah, I'll explain on the way to Training Ground 7. Itachi fell into step beside the copy ninja. So, what is it? He prompted. Kakashi sighed, and even through his mask, Itachi could sense the weight of his thoughts. Something just isn't adding up. Naruko mentioned that her father's letter spoke about your return, but Minato-sensei had already passed away years before the events involving the Uchiha clan. What I don't understand is how he could have possibly known what was coming. Itachi took a deep breath, exhaling slowly before responding. Minato-sama was aware of the situation because he had a hand in planning it. Kakashi stopped in his tracks, his surprise evident. He knew? Itachi gave a solemn nod. Yes. He was aware that my father had something planned, but he didn't know the details. At the time, as a Chunin, my orders were to keep a close watch on my clan for any signs of unrest. Once I had gathered enough evidence, he appointed me to the Anbu and entrusted me with the most difficult mission he could have given. Kakashi braced himself. What mission? If the Uchiha were to grow restless and prepare for an uprising, I was to stop them. It was not only the hardest mission for me to accept but also the hardest for him to give. He was asking me to take action against not just my own family, but his as well. That night, we tried to set aside our sorrows. Kushina-san found us the next morning, completely exhausted. If he had been there when it happened, I know he would have stood by my side. Kakashi observed him, a deep understanding settling in as he grasped the weight of what had transpired. I'm sorry, Itachi. That must have been incredibly difficult for you. Itachi remained quiet for a moment before nodding. Yes, but it helps to finally talk about it. Kakashi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Once we finish our business with Sasuke and Sakura, let's take some time to unwind. Itachi offered a small smile. That sounds like a plan. Dash. Naruko focused intently, biting her lip in concentration as she channeled her chakra the way Jiraiya had demonstrated. Her brows furrowed in determination. That's it, you're almost there, Jiraiya encouraged. With a sharp exhale, Naruko gasped as the rubber ball in her hand suddenly burst. This is tougher than I expected, she admitted. Jiraiya chuckled. Well, it did take me 3 years to master. Naruko glanced at him, determination flashing in her eyes. But I should have it down by the end of this trip, right? I've got an advantage over you, after all. She grinned, her confidence unwavering. Maybe so, Jiraiya mused. But don't underestimate the challenge. Naruko huffed. This is still easier than learning the Hiraishin technique. Now that was exhausting. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Training was that intense? Naruko rolled her eyes. Yeah. Itachi-sensei pushed me non-stop, always making me go beyond my limits. It was right around the time Sakura and Sasuke started dating, so I guess he just wanted to keep me focused on something else. Jiraiya nodded in understanding. The third Hokage used a similar approach when Tsunade started seeing Dan. Shaking off the thought, he refocused. Alright, listen up. We're just outside Tanzaku town, where Tsunade is supposed to be. Stay alert while I gather information. In gambling circles, she's known as the legendary sucker. Naruko groaned. You've told me this 1,000 times already. Let's hurry before she slips away. Jiraiya chuckled as Naruko dashed into the town, her excitement evident. Tsunade observed the young girl standing before her, her patience wearing thin. Naruko had been quite persistent, and she had finally pushed Tsunade to her limit. Off to the side, Jiraiya stood with a casual grin, watching the exchange with amusement. Tsunade shot him a glance before turning her attention back to Naruko. She took note of the chunin vest the girl wore and nearly scoffed when Naruko pulled out a kunai. Do you really think you can challenge me with that? Tsunade asked. Naruko didn't respond with words. Instead, she casually tossed the kunai toward Tsunade's feet. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary throw, but had Tsunade looked closer, she would have noticed the intricate seal wrapped around the handle. However, she remained focused on the one who had thrown it. You'll have to do better than that. Naruko simply smiled and lifted her hand, palm facing upward. As Tsunade watched, chakra began swirling just above her fingers, quickly forming into a sphere of wind that crackled and hissed with power. Tsunade's eyes narrowed as she turned toward Jiraiya. You taught her that jutsu? She asked. Jiraiya chuckled. I barely had to. I showed it to her once, she figured out the rest on her own. Tsunade turned back to Naruko, making a quick decision. Are you ready? She asked. Naruko nodded before vanishing in a blur of motion. Tsunade barely had time to react before the Rasengan in Naruko's hand dissipated just before making contact. Instead of the spinning sphere, Naruko's fist met Tsunade's stomach, sending her staggering back. As Tsunade steadied herself, she realized that Naruko had already moved away. Looking down the street, she spotted Naruko tossing the same kunai from earlier. As it spun through the air, Tsunade caught a glimpse of its shape and something clicked in her mind. Is that? She murmured. Jiraiya nodded. Yep. She's come a long way. You mean she's already mastered the Rasengan? Jiraiya nodded again. And how do you think she got so close to you just now? Tsunade's eyes widened. You're saying she's using the Hiraishin? Jiraiya gave her a knowing look. Naruko's voice broke the silence. The seal still needs a little fine-tuning, but Jiraiya-sensei agreed to help me work out the details. Tsunade turned to look at her. Jiraiya-sensei? She repeated. Naruko grinned mischievously. Yeah. One of the more entertaining parts of traveling with her is seeing how she manages to get into awkward situations with the ladies, Tsunade remarked, glancing back at Jiraiya for a moment. It sounds like the Leaf Village is facing more challenges than I expected. Jiraiya suddenly stiffened. Where did you hear that from? He asked cautiously. Tsunade lowered her gaze. Orochimaru. He claimed he could bring back Dan and my younger brother if I healed his arms. I told him I would consider it. Feeling a hand on her shoulder, she looked down to see Naruko standing beside her. Go ahead with the meeting, Naruko said with a confident smile. But we'll make sure to add an unexpected twist to the plan. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. What kind of twist are we talking about? My dear YouTube family. That's all for today. I truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. Your support keeps this channel alive and thriving. Thank you, and see you in the next one. Anime Dreams.